Hello, lads. I remember when I did my "How am I doing, guys?" video, and asked for feedback about what you wanted to see more of, and some of you said, you know what, I really like it when you do movie reviews. I think that's really good. I really enjoy those videos. And others of you said, I don't really care for the movie reviews that much. Well, guess what? Some of you are in luck because I'm about to do a movie review, which some of you really like and others of you really hate. My movie review is of a an interesting little movie that doesn't really get a lot of play, doesn't really get a lot of hype, but I think it's in its own way. It kind of has plays a significant role in the history of contemporary cinema. I don't know. I don't know if I really believe that or not. But I do think it's an interesting movie. And that movie is one that was made in 1999 called The Minus Man. 1999 was a very interesting year for cinema. And I remember it because, unlike a lot of you, I was there. And unlike even more of you, I was a fully grown adult in 1999. And I got to experience the cinema year all for myself. In fact, for part of that year, I actually worked in a movie theater. So, yeah, I mean, it was clearly everything was coming together, cosmically speaking. So, yeah, you had Fight Club, you had The Matrix, you had that movie where Kevin Spacey throws the spaghetti against the wall and says, "Don't interrupt me, honey." You had Office Space. You had the new Star Wars movie, The Phantom Menace. I don't know if I would include that, but it was also in that same year. But there were. It seemed like there were a lot of movies that were being made about misfits, about people trying to break free from the stifling, stultifying routine of corporate life and so forth. That really seemed to be a theme, a through line, if you will, running through that year. And I'm not saying all these movies are good necessarily, or I'm not unreservedly praising them, but I think they were all important in their way. And I do say that Fight Club was great. I still hold to that. But and Office Space, I'm also a big fan of. The rest of them, I'm not necessarily praising to the hilt, but I am saying that they were interesting and that they showed themselves to be part of this interesting trend. So The Minus Man, how exactly does it fit in with all these other movies? I'm not sure. Let me tell you first what The Minus Man is about, because chances are you've never heard of it before. But The Minus Man starred Owen Wilson when he was very young and had only been in a couple of things before, up to that point. The only other thing I remember him being in was a film called Bottle Rocket, which was Wes Anderson's debut major movie, and it was not at all like a Wes Anderson movie as you're familiar with them today. It didn't have all the contrivances. It was quirky in its way, but it was much more just kind of reserved and laid back, indie kind of movie. He was very funny in that movie, and his brother also, Luke Wilson, was in it as well. But I believe that was the only the only thing that he had been in prior to that point, unless I'm mistaken, which I probably am. After The Minus Man, Owen Wilson kind of became this stock, especially during the aughts, and even into the tens. He was this stock, quirky, comedic sort of character, the wow guy, the sort of hippie country boy amalgam. He was interesting. He had a presence about him, and he certainly was could be funny. And but in The Minus Man, much more subdued performance, because he was just sort of, he wasn't really that big a deal at the time. So it wasn't like, wow, see Owen Wilson in this major role. And so he was playing it much more, much more reservedly. He wasn't really just going for it. He wasn't being his wild and crazy self. Although the character that he plays is pretty crazy, but not that wild. The Minus Man is about a young man who drives a pickup truck, and he's just drifting his way through, I guess it's the Pacific Northwest. It's somewhere out west. It seems more to the north. It doesn't really scream out California to me. Generally in the more rural areas. And he's this isn't too much of a spoiler, because this is sort of the whole premise of the movie. He's a serial killer, but he's like the nicest serial killer that you've ever met. He's a nice boy. he's a nice boy. He's like the kind of young man that if you introduced him to your mom, she would say he's such a nice young man. That's how he comes across. He has a very benign sort of demeanor and countenance in this movie. But he's a nice serial killer. And what I mean by that is, he seems to go around finding people that he thinks are unhappy, and when he determines that they're unhappy in their lives and that they'd really rather not be alive anymore, he finds a way to get them to take a swig from his little casket. Not casket. What am I trying to say? His little canteen, I'll just call it, where it's actually it's some kind of alcohol mix, but he's also mixed in this poison fungus, and it kills pretty instantly and painlessly. So the first person that we see him kill is Sheryl Crow. Yes, the singer Sheryl Crow. She's this junkie who's in a bar. She's on all kinds of medication. She says she's allergic to a ton of things, and she's a drunk. She keeps asking for more and more alcohol. The bartender's getting pretty fed up, and then eventually kicks her out, and she ends up with our anti-hero, whose name is, by the way, is Van, with two N's, Vann. Not sure what the significance of that is. He doesn't drive a van; he drives a pickup truck. But so he ends up killing her, just in the nicest, gentlest sort of way, just by she's got heroin, she's shooting up. He's determined basically that she's somebody who doesn't want to live. In her heart of hearts, doesn't really want to live any longer. So he helps her to die, and then puts her body in a public restroom area, and makes it look like she just OD'd, and moves on. He finds this kind of idyllic small town. He ends up renting a room from this couple who are struggling because it seems that they have lost their daughter, and it's never entirely clear what it means, what the loss means in this case. They talk about her as if she's just gone, as if she went away to school, and she's not, and they just haven't heard from her in a while. But one gets the impression as the movie progresses that maybe she has died, or maybe she's gone missing. Maybe ironically, she was one of his victims. I don't know if that's ever suggested, but it seems like it's a possibility. And in any case, he becomes this sort of substitute for them, for their daughter. They end up treating him as if he were one of their own. But then I don't know if I want to get too detailed about the plot, because I don't want to, I do think it's worth seeing. I will say that. If you haven't seen it or haven't even heard about it, I think it's worth checking out. If you don't mind the slow burn movie, okay? And what I mean by that, just a movie that's very slow paced, because this movie is slow. I mean, it's not that long, but it is quite slow. And one of the most interesting thing about it is of course the main character, and the movie doesn't really try too hard to explain him, how he got to be the way that he is. He says at one point that he was taking care of his dad, who was sick, and then when his father died, he didn't really have a reason to be around there any longer. He says he's from Vancouver, and that he just decided to take off and drive around and see things, and people accept that, but of course one wonders, did he kill his dad? Did he put his dad out of his misery, thinking that it was the right thing to do? How did he get to be this way? What made him somebody who thinks in those kinds of terms? He has this, like I said, just generally very, very nice, friendly, boy next door kind of demeanor. But there's also something about him that's a little strange, a little off-putting, but only in a very quiet, sort of low-key kind of way. He doesn't really seem to know how to respond to intimacy. There's Janeane Garofalo, before she became this, this tattooed, angry, hateful, uber feminist that she turned into in the Bush years, as I recall. She gives a very strong performance as just somebody who ends up working with our anti-hero Van, and clearly has a thing for him, but is awkward about showing it, and he's very awkward in his and ambiguous in his responses to her. Getting into too much detail, we see that Van's choice to live the way he does, and to be to be somebody who puts people out of their misery, how it has unforeseen consequences, because somebody that he ends up killing, believing that he's doing them a favor, that ends up really, I won't explain here exactly how or why, but it ends up messing with the mind of one of the two people who, the parent, the lost parents, the couple, the older couple that he's renting this room from, with their vanished daughter, the specter of their vanished daughter hovering around in the ether. It ends up affecting one of them very much, and possibly pushing this person to commit a murder. And that's an interesting twist, because you think that somebody like Van doing what he does, justifies what he does in his mind by thinking, I'm really not harming anyone. I'm only helping people. But he doesn't think also, even if that's true, even if we grant him that, even if we say, yeah, you're right to kill people who you think want to die, you still don't grasp the consequences, how this death could lead to other problems with other people and so forth. So interesting as far as that goes as well. Van has a voiceover. There's a narration that pipes up every now and then, and we sort of hear the inner workings of his mind, but we never get too close to him. We like I said, the movie does a good job of balancing things. It tells us a little bit about Van without telling us too much, or without wanting to connect all of the dots so that we know all of his backstory, and therefore can understand totally why he became the way he became. But he's haunted by these two cops who he sees in his mind, or he imagines scenarios where they're grilling him, and the cops are maybe his conscience. It's not totally clear, but one of them is Dwight Yoakam. The other is, oh god, the good-looking black guy, character actor, with a really great voice, but I can't remember. I don't think I know his name. These two cops, who probably don't exist in the real world, probably just are part of his fevered imagination. They show up from time to time and ask him pressing questions about why he's doing the things that he's doing. So things go, things progress to a point. They come to a head, but there's not too much of a resolution. The final scene is interesting, and I'm not going to give it away, but it suggests that his demons are perhaps catching up to him, or they're onto him. They know, again, we see another character who's another law enforcement officer, who might or might not really be there, but we see them driving down the road, and this other officer is looking over at him, glaring at him, like I know who you are, I know what you did, I know about you. And then there's the road divides, and he goes one way, and the police goes the other way. So he technically gets away, but does he really get away? So it ends ambiguously, and I've said many times that sometimes an ambiguous ending is the only satisfying ending, and I don't know. I get a lot of pushback from others for that. Others who think no, I want to find out what happens. Well, sometimes it's like if it all pushed towards some definite, high def resolution to retool that phrase, a resolution that's all cut and dried, and we know for sure that this happened or that happened, and there's no room for speculation. Sometimes that feels like just a cheat. That feels highly unsatisfying to me. And in this case, I think the best kind of ending for a movie like this, which is about a character who can't really be understood, and who's strangely endearing, in addition to being off-putting. I think there's something off-putting about him, even if we didn't know the things he was doing. But there's also something about him that's, like I said, you know, endearing, vulnerable. You know, the boy next door, he seems like a friendly guy, has this goofy smile, and he's so it's an interesting character study generally. Also got to say, I can't help but watch this movie, and this isn't so much about the movie itself, but I like I've said before, 1999 wasn't that long ago, and one gets the feeling that the world that is presented to us in this movie is, you know, while it's certainly far from perfect. This is not. I mean, this is a disturbing movie with a lot of characters who are deeply unhappy and all of that. But yet there is a sense of things being nice and clean and orderly, and you know, a sense of things not having fallen apart, a sense of pre-fall America, and that's something that I'm finding more and more haunting when I go back and watch older movies, not even old movies, because 24 years isn't that long ago, but you know, we're not talking about something from the 50s or 60s. But just to see how far we've fallen, I mean, just to get the sense of what the world was like back then. And I'm not just talking about the you know, the boomer kind of cliches of, oh, everybody wasn't on their phones back then, everybody wasn't looking at their damn phones back then. But you know, it's that and much more than that. Anyway, that's sort of an ancillary thing, not really related to the review of the movie itself. So those are my thoughts on The Minus Man. If you've seen it, let me know how you feel about it below, or if you have any comment on my comments, let me know, and thank you for watching.